So many of our lying and floor stretches can be done on the bed, and you can do some perfectly helpful stretches that way. But for many people we work with, it can be quite important to work to getting down towards the floor and up. It may be something that people haven't done for a long time and may have lost a lot of confidence. And if that feels the case for you, or particularly if you have good reasons to want to get down onto the floor, maybe you've got young children or grandchildren that you want to play with, it might be important to work to doing some of these stretches on the floor to help build your confidence. But if you're not too sure, it might be that you want to come down using a chair. So we're just going to show you an easy way to get down. So it might be that you want to turn to face the chair or a sofa that might be around for you. And just taking some support from the chair to come down, first of all, just dropping down onto one knee. And then onto the other knee. And then it might be that you can place a hand to the side and just drop down onto a side hip, and then be able to swivel yourself around into sitting and lying slowly. And we can of course do the opposite on the way back up again. So once we've been on the floor, we can come round onto a side hip, and we can take some support from a chair in front. We can just come up onto knees, and then to raise, it might be placing what feels perhaps like your stronger leg up onto the floor. So you've got your stronger leg to just push through to bring yourself up and onto the chair into sitting or standing. So just there as a little guidance if that feels helpful for you. So these are our floor stretches. As with our seated and standing stretches, we'll guide for around 5 breath cycles to give you time to expand the program. But if you're working with 2, 3 or 4, just take a pause between stretches and wait for the next stretch quietly. Again, some stretches will have some options, so we'll show you these before we move into the hold part of the stretch so that you can choose where you want to work with it. So coming into sitting, and it might be helpful here to rest against perhaps the back of a couch or a wall, just to give yourself some support to sit a little taller. And just beginning to open the right hip, so allowing the right knee to just drop open to the side. Perhaps taking a little bit of gentle pressure on the inside of the right knee with the right hand, just to encourage the knee to open a little bit. 2 to 5 breaths here. 3, 4, and 5, and bringing the hip back in, and either doing the same on the left side, or if you're relatively flexible or comfortable with this, it might be that you bring the feet together and allow both knees to drop open together into a frog stretch. So choosing whichever option and taking 2 to 5 breaths. Again, you might want to still be sitting against a supporting surface, just so you can let go around the hips a little more. It's a little harder work doing it in sitting without support. 5, just releasing that stretch. And then taking the left leg out in front, so allowing that to rest down, keeping the right knee up. We're just going to do a gentle spinal twist, similar to that we did on our chair. So we're going to sit tall, and we're going to gently rotate round to the right, taking the left hand to the outside of the right knee, using the right hand behind for support, and just gently drawing the upper body round into a seated spinal twist. 2 to 5 breaths. You might feel this a little more on the outside of the right hip as well, compared to when you were doing this same stretch in sitting. So just notice how it's different. 4 and 5. Easing out. We're going to swap over and do the same on the other side. So swapping the legs over. This time taking the right hand to the outer right knee, supporting with the left hand behind so that you can keep the body as upright as possible. So we're coming tall first and then twisting round to the left. 2 to 5 breaths. 3, 4, and 5. Just easing out of this stretch. Then we're going to come down into lying, so bringing both feet up and just easing yourself down. See if it's possible just to come down slowly and gradually, bringing down the low back, then the mid back, then the upper back. And just allowing us to get used to being lying here, just taking a couple of pelvic tilts and raises. So just allowing the hips to rock back so that we bring the lower back into contact with the mat, and just gently lifting the lower part of the spine and just rolling up the spine, just rolling up and down, just allowing the spine to get used to being flat and in this lying position. And then coming to rest. And we're going to stretch the arms overhead. So it might be, if you have full movement in your shoulders, you might be quite comfortable to raise both arms up and overhead. If you have some restrictions though, it might be that you want to do one at a time, and it might even be that you want to support one arm with the other whilst exploring where the end point of stretch is, so that we can just rest there if you're not able to bring the arms overhead. So finding where is a position you can come to, and just taking our 2 to 5 breaths, just resting in this open position. 3, 4, 5, and only if you wish to, it might be that you want to extend the legs away and take a full reach through from fingertips to toes. It might be that you can reach through the right fingertips and the right toes, reaching through the right side of the body, and then doing the same on the other side, reaching through the left fingertips down to the left toes, stretching through the full length of the left side of the body. This might feel like quite an intense stretch, so just knowing that this is an option or something that you can work towards. And then bringing the knees back in if they've been extended, and slowly bringing the arms back over to rest down. Now taking the arms out to the side at 90 degrees to the body. Taking a bend into the elbows, and allowing the backs of the hands to just start to fall gently towards the floor until you feel a sense of stretch and opening through the front of the chest. And breathing here very much into the front of the body, opening up the front of the rib cage as you take an inhale. Noticing how this adds into the sense of opening and stretch in the front of the chest. And on the exhale, just letting go of the arms that little bit more, allowing them to be just gently moving towards the floor, but wherever they get to, just working with your edge of gentle stretch. And then easing the arms back out of the position, back down to rest by the side or wherever's comfortable. So we're going to move now into the lower body, and taking the right knee and just gently hugging it in towards the chest. So getting hold of wherever you feel able to. It might be the back of the thigh behind the knee. It might be in front of the knee. It might be just getting hold of a piece of trouser leg if you're not able to get to either of those. But gently hugging it in so you feel some stretch in the right hip. 2 to 5 breaths. 3, 4, and 5. Resting that leg down and doing the same on the left leg. So gently drawing the left thigh in, hugging it in towards the chest, holding on wherever feels possible, grabbing the trouser leg, back of thigh, perhaps in front of the knee. Taking our 2 to 5 breaths and just checking in with the rest of the body, making sure that that's as relaxed and soft as it can be, that we're not holding through the shoulders or the face. Other parts of the body aren't more involved than they need to be. And releasing the left leg back down to rest foot on the floor, and coming back to the right leg. So similar to our last stretch, bringing the knee in as if we're going to hug it into the chest again, but this time just taking the right foot to rest on the outside, towards the outside of the left knee, but just drawing the right knee in and across towards the left shoulder. So just taking a diagonal line this time on the stretch of the right leg. You may feel this a little bit more in the bum muscles of the right hip, maybe a little more into the groin. If it's particularly uncomfortable in the groin, just ease back and come into a slightly more parallel stretch. 4 and 5. Resting the foot back down and doing the same on the other leg. So picking up the left thigh, just taking the left foot towards the outside of the right knee and just drawing the left knee towards the right shoulder, taking a slightly diagonal line. 2 to 5 breaths, stretching into the bum muscles of the left hip now. Relaxing the rest of the body. And placing the foot back down, easing out of that stretch. We're going to move into the mid-body and do some knee rolls. So we've got 3 options here. So the first is just to keep the feet planted where they are, parallel. And just taking the knees gently to the right, just allowing the feet to roll with the hips. So this is your first option, just keeping the feet where they are and just letting the knees drop one side. The second option is to allow the feet to stack as you roll. So bringing the feet on top of each other, and as you bring the knees to one side, allowing the feet to follow. So they remain stacked on top of each other, and this may afford a little bit more range for you to stretch into. The third option is to take one leg down straight along the mat, to allow the other leg to lift up as we rotate over, allowing the leg to come over, bringing the pelvis and the hips with it. And a slightly stronger stretch here. You can pop the hand onto the outside of the knee just to gently encourage into that stretch. But they're just 3 versions. So again, depending on your flexibility, your confidence, choosing an option. So we come back to the starting position and you can choose an option for us to take our 2 to 5 breaths. So moving the knees to the right first of all. Coming to where feels a gentle edge of stretch through the waist, particularly the left side of the body here, and breathing into the side body. And with the out breath, just letting go a little bit more of the knees, allowing gravity to just open up through the side body. 3. Noticing how the in-breath expands the side body and the out-breath allows it to just let go and open a little further. 4. And 5, easing back out of the stretch. Just taking a moment. And then going the other way, so allowing the knees to drop to the left this time. And again, you may choose a different version from one side to the other. 2 to 5 breaths, expanding the side body on the right now with an in-breath. And with the out-breath, just letting go and allowing gravity to take the knees. So softening with the out-breath. 4 and 5. And coming back out of the stretch, coming back to rest with our feet on the floor. And we're going to work to another hip opener here. So if it's possible, taking the right foot to rest on the top of the left knee. If this feels too much, so we're going to allow the hip to open here. If this feels too much, it might be that the left foot is a little lower to the ground. So just taking a little bit out of that stretch. So the left leg can be anywhere that feels possible to rest the foot on the leg, just to allow the right knee to open. If it's possible to have the foot on the knee, it might be that we can bring that foot in a little bit closer to the body. It might even be that we can reach through and get hold of the left thigh and bring that in a little closer to stretch more into the right hip. Wherever you are, taking 2 to 5 breaths. 5 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 to you're resting with the foot flat, maybe just a gentle hand on the inside of the knee, encouraging the hip to open. 4 and 5. Releasing the stretch, letting the right foot come down onto the floor and swapping to the other side. And again, it might be possible to be in a different position one side to the other. So seeing what's possible each way and choosing what feels appropriate. 2 to 5 breaths. 2, 3, 4. Stretch here being felt in the muscles of the left hip. And 5, letting the leg rest down, releasing the stretch. Just taking a moment. So we're going to move into a stretch for the back of the thigh, just like we did a version of this in standing and in seating. We're going to take the right thigh in towards the chest, taking hold of the back of the thigh wherever's possible. And then we're just going to gently work to straighten the right knee. Now, it's unlikely that you're going to get this knee straight, but just working towards that direction until you feel some gentle stretch in the back of the right thigh, and just gently drawing that thigh towards you. 2 to 5 breaths here. Now what you'll also notice is the muscles at the front of the thigh and maybe the stomach muscles doing a little bit of supporting work, and you may notice the leg juddering a little. Don't worry about that. Again, it's just a little indication of strength. Something else we might want to work with. 3, 4 and 5, letting the knee bend and then letting the foot come back down to the floor. And swapping over to the other side. So bringing the left knee in towards the chest, just getting hold of wherever's possible, and then gently working to bring the knee a little straighter just until you feel some stretch in the back of the left thigh. 2 to 5 breaths, gently drawing the thigh in, noticing the work happening through the front of the thigh, the tummy. 3, 4 and 5, letting the knee come down and placing the foot back on the mat. And for the next one, we're going to turn over onto our tummies. So just taking a few moments to come around onto our tummies. And for some, if this is a position you've not been in for a long time, actually resting and breathing here may feel helpful enough. If it feels particularly intense being in this position on your tummy, it might be that you start off having a pillow underneath the tummy just to take a little bit of that stretch out the low back. But if it's possible to be here, just take a few breaths to just acclimatise to being on the tummy. And then if it's possible, we're going to begin to start to just gently press through the elbows and just bring the upper body up into a gentle back bend. So it might be that we're just coming onto the elbows, but notice that there is quite a bit of range between being here and gradually coming down towards being on the front. So noticing that there's a whole range here that you can work to. So it might be that you're just a small way into the range or a little further into the range, or you may be able to come up onto elbows, but just allowing the body to rest and sag in this position. Imagining maybe a small child sitting watching telly, just casually resting here and breathing. If any time it feels a little intense, know that you can always just ease down a little way without having to come fully out of the stretch. But we're very much propping on the elbows here, we're not lifting the body. And then coming down to rest back on our fronts and just let the head rest. Just let yourself have a moment here. And next we're going to do a lying version of the front of thigh stretch that we did in standing, where we were standing on one leg and drawing the foot towards the bottom. So we're going to do the right leg first. So bringing the right knee up. And again, as in standing, it might be that you're just able to grab hold of a piece of sock or the back of your trouser leg, or it might be that you can get to the front of the ankle or perhaps the toes. If you can't reach any of these places, again, it might be that you loop a towel or a dressing gown cord around the front of the ankle just to bridge the gap between and just drawing the foot towards the bottom here. So the stretch here is down the front of the thigh, the front of the hip. 2 to 5 breaths here. Let the rest of the body rest down on the mat. Doesn't need to be doing anything. The head can rest, face is soft. 4 and 5. Gently releasing the foot, resting it down, and coming to do the other side. Another version might be just to cross the ankles. So if it's feeling really difficult to get hold of any part of the foot, or you're even struggling with the option of having a towel or a band, it might be that you cross the ankles and use the other leg as a way of helping to just bring that foot in. So it's another option, as long as you're able to get a sense of stretch down the front of the thigh. So bringing the heel towards the bottom, holding a part of that leg if that is possible, and just drawing it in, getting that stretch down the front of the thigh. 3, 4 and 5. And releasing the foot, letting it come back down. And we're going to slowly come onto hands and knees. However you might want to do that, just giving yourself a few moments to come up onto hands and knees. And it might be, depending on where you're doing this, you might want a pillow under the knees just to give the knees a little bit of extra cushioning. It might be that you want to rest onto what we call monkey knuckles rather than having the wrist extended. That might be a little bit more comfortable. So deciding how you want to be, but having the hands underneath the shoulders, the hips over the knees. And we're going to do a cat-cow stretch here. So on an out breath, tucking the tailbone under so that we're drawing the low back up towards the ceiling, dropping the head down, rounding through the back on an out breath. And then on an in breath, taking our spine the opposite way, tilting the tailbone up towards the ceiling, allowing the back to sag, the head to just raise. Breathing in, breathing out, coming into our hump position, tucking the tailbone under, lifting up through the low back, the mid back. And then on an in breath, coming the opposite way, tilting the tailbone up, letting the back sag in the middle, raising the head. And once more on an out breath, humping up, tucking the tailbone under, letting the head dangle. And on an out breath, tilting the tailbone up, letting the back sag in the middle, gently raising the head, and then coming back to a more neutral position somewhere in between the two. And then to finish, we're going to come into just a version of a stretch known as child's pose. Depending on how flexible your knees are, you may wish to place a pillow across the back of your calves to just bridge the gap a little bit between your bum and your heels. But we're going to just gently take the bum back towards the heels and see if we can just come down to rest with the arms in front. If this feels a little much, it might be that you want to bend the elbows and rest onto the forearms, just coming back and allowing the head to rest. It might be that you want to stack the fists one on top of the other and rest the forehead onto the hands, and we can rest here. So a few different options. If you feel quite happy, it might be that you don't need the pillow between the knees and the feet, and you might be able to just come back and rest into this nice child's pose position just to finish. And taking a few breaths here, breathing into the ribs at the back of the body. Just letting the body rest here. And just easing back out of this position. And coming back to sit or rest however you wish. So that's the end of our floor stretches.